Greetings, Missouri Mid-South Conference. I bring you greetings today from my office in Webster Groves at the conference office. Today, I want to talk about money. Woohoo! Because this is the time of season that most of our churches are having a stewardship Sunday or focusing on voting on the budget for 2018 and talking about our generosity and inviting all of our churches to be generous. And I know that for most of our members and our ministers and our churches, the first thing that they want to do is to talk about money. Okay, not really. Many of us get really anxious and fidgety when we have to talk about money, and we ministers are so concerned about upsetting people or talking about money or giving money that we try every trick in the book so that we don't have to be vulnerable in talking about money, or to maybe we're going to offend somebody in inviting them or asking them to give. I know this, and in some ways I'm kind of joking tongue-in-cheek because that's how I approached stewardship for a long time in my ministry. In seminary, I didn't necessarily get a good how-to practical guide of number one, how to talk about money. Number two, how to work with budgets and churches, and how to shape budgets and how to talk about narrative budgets of how much, what percentage of our budgets is going to our ministries and what we do as ministers, how that's affected and offered in different ways. Instead, I was given more of the, I can give you the Greek and the Hebrew, and I can preach a great sermon, but talking about money is very uncomfortable. But then in my local church in Texas, there was a member who really kept pushing me, and in some ways it really did feel like pushing. She was a businesswoman, and she was used to talking about money. She was involved with a nonprofit, with a school board in that area, and she was very comfortable. And her approach was, why aren't we inviting people to be generous? People are giving their money. Now, the question is, are they giving their money to the UCC church, or are they giving their money to the hospital or the university or the museum? Because the church is not asking and inviting generosity like the hospital and the university and the museum. And so I began to read, and I began to lean into my discomfort, and I realized people are yearning to talk about money. So this morning I want to say, let's talk about money. Woohoo! Because this is the expression of how we can be generous in what God has given to us and how we can give. Now, sometimes we think that to be generous, we have to have a lot of money, or as a church, to be generous, we have to have a huge budget. And I say, no way. Some of our most generous churches are our smallest churches in membership, because it's at that critical moment that we all have to pitch in order to make a difference. One of the things that I learned very quickly in reading and in listening to those who are really good at inspiring generosity is people want to make a difference. People who are joining churches today are joining because they want to make a difference. They want to roll up their shirt sleeves, and they want to serve in the community in which they live so that they can make a difference. And they want to give their money not to keep the institution going, but they want to give their money knowing that they are making a difference in their community. So I invite our local churches to inspire and invite people to be generous because we want to make a difference in serving our community and God's beloved community by making a difference more than what we could do in our own particular individual ways. In my local church, it was my practice as a minister in the time of inviting people to pledge, a ritual that I think has deep sacred roots. What is it that I am willing to not only put my words and not only my actions, but my actual checkbook or my debit card or my actual money that I have worked hard for? What is it that I'm willing to give my money to for the church? Am I willing to actually practice what I preach? In that ritual of inviting people to consider what they would pledge for the upcoming year, it was my practice to share what I would personally be pledging. And I did this not from a place of, ooh, look at me, look at me. I did it as a model of servant leadership because I believed that the church already knows what my salary is. The conference already knows what my salary is. So, if the church already knows what my salary is, why not practice what I preach and offer my own testimony? Let me be the first to say, this is how I'm going to be giving, and this is how it's going to stretch me to the point that I'm going to have to give up a Starbucks. I'm going to have to give up something that I really love in order to invest my very self in the church that I love. So I thought that I would do that with the Missouri Mid-South Conference this year as well. So I will share that it has been my practice that my pledge is twofold. What I give to the church is both my local church and what I give to the local church every time I worship in a different place. And so this past year, what I give to my home church, St. John's BIM in Owensville, is $250 a pay period, which is every 2 weeks, or $500 a month. And then every time I worship in a church, a local church, I believe that it is my responsibility to invest my very money into that local church with no strings attached. I'm not saying that this church needs to give to OCWM or to this offering or to Friends of the Conference. I give it as a way to celebrate and to share and invest myself in the ministries of that local church. And I do that in a way that sometimes it's kind of tight on the wallet. I give $100 every Sunday wherever I'm worshiping. It may be a large church that has a huge budget. It may be a church of 15. I give $100 every Sunday as a way to say to that local church, to the Missouri Mid-South Conference, and to my spiritual journey, these churches are important, and I invest myself in my generosity to these churches as well. And so I want to share with you that in the upcoming year, my pledge in both regards, here is my pledge card that I have received. My pledge for St. John's BIM will be $250 a week, or every 2 weeks, every pay period. And so that is $6,000. And then $100 every time I worship in another place, and that is $4,500. I'm giving about thinking that I will worship in at least 45 churches, different places. And so my pledge for 2018 is $10,500. That does not include the pledge that I will give and have given, which is $1,000 to Friends of the Conference. So that total would be $11,500. Again, I share this not to say, look at me, look at me. I do this to model servant leadership. That if we in our local churches, and if we as the conference and inviting our churches to give to our church's wider mission, to the conference and to the broader United Church of Christ, then we spiritual leaders must be willing to be the first, to be vulnerable, to share with you that this pledge of $11,500 for me, that's a big chunk of my salary, knowing that I have responsibilities and car payments and student loans and my rent for my apartment in my Texas home expenses, but also knowing that if we are going to be serious about doing and being the church, that it must also include the generosity with which we have been given. So my brothers and sisters, I invite you to reflect on what you have been given, that you are a vessel of God's love, of the financial resources, whether great or whether smaller in terms of those resources, and that you and I have a responsibility that we are to give, not because someone is behind us saying, give, 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 but because the divine is in front of us in all of the ways that we can make a difference in our local community, in the Missouri Mid-South Conference, as we are seeking to welcome and serve all, and in God's beloved community, which in this day and age desperately needs a welcoming, hospitable presence of love in the ways in which our ministries are offered. And so, my friends, won't you consider giving? Woohoo! That we can be companions together in how and what we give this day and forevermore. Amen.